Welcome back to the Wingspan Podcast, episode 45. I'm Doug Barak, joined by my co-host Chris Mulholland of Nets Daily and our special guest. He runs the social media for Whistle Sports and is the brand manager and one of the founding fathers of the Knicks Wall.
Welcome, Kyle Maggio, to the podcast. Thank you for taking some time out of your morning to join Doug and I. What's going on, man? How you doing?
What's going on, fellas? Happy you guys asked me to be on. Happy to talk a little New York sports, New York basketball. So what's going on?
Not too much. Happy Pi Day. Happy getting losing an hour of sleep day. Happy March Madness bracket day for those who may care. But yeah, so can you talk about your journey, where you are today, what college you go to, first relevant position or internship, and when did you realize that you want to work in sports?
Yeah, so the easiest way to answer that is to answer off that last question. When I realized I wanted to work in sports, probably always. The moment that it happened was I was job hopping a lot. I was working a lot of different positions, and I was working maintenance at the time. I was working full time, and it was it was a particularly rough day. And I remember just saying to myself, like, you know what? I'm just gonna go for it. I'm just gonna start writing about basketball, figure it out. So I made a couple of my boys made like this kind of cheap website, just the three of us to write. It was called Blacktop Banter. From there, we did that for a few months. I saw the Knicks Wall had a position opening up to write about basketball. So I said, okay. I leveraged my initial website into writing for the Knicks Wall. And then from there, I just grew with those guys. It was Ryan Punzalan who was kind of restarting a lot of what the Knicks Wall was going to be doing. It was just a few of us writing in the beginning. It was pretty much just a bare bones blog. We barely had any followers on Twitter. And then, the 5-6 of us really turned on the gas from there and just made it a social media outlet, made it a digital magazine of sorts, got our credentials from the Knicks, got things, going for us in that sense. And it started to feel good, like to build that on our own and get somewhere with that. And that turned into everything with Whistle eventually. I met a few people, doing the podcast, and Jack Settlement got me, we met via Blue Wire at the time because we were on that podcast network. And then from Blue Wire, Jack was working at Whistle. Jack put me on there, and then the rest was history. So pretty much the moral of the story is just like do a bunch of stuff. I didn't really have a plan. It was just, I like writing about the Knicks and basketball, and eventually that was fun enough where people cared enough. And then when people care enough, good things tend to happen. So, it's been a strange but enjoyable journey to get to where we got to.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I got to ask you, so what are some of your keys of the game? Like, what are your things that kind of, pushed you in this direction, that kind of fueled you, that kind of gave you such drive that, like, never give up? Like, what would be your best advice to people that were in your similar shoes to make it to where you are, Whistle, Knicks Wall, like getting credentialed and all these various, positive things happening. So what are some advice you might want to give to those?
You just got to stay active, man. You just got to stay busy. And it sounds like really basic, but you just got to do stuff, whatever that is that you think you enjoy. You can't really people spend so much time thinking about stuff, planning stuff, working stuff through their heads. Everything's got to go exactly according to plan. We didn't have a plan. We never have a plan. That's the beauty of it. We just wake up every morning and we just do the job, whatever the job is. So you got to just start somewhere is what I like to tell people. Like from where I was at the time, I wasn't going to school anymore. I thought that ship had sailed. I was 24, 25. And that's when I started deciding, I was like, all right, man, you know what? I'm just going to start trying to do this and see what happens. And I got to the point where before 30 started to work out for me. So it's like, there's no timeline on this stuff. People go to college and, 22, 23, they want to have it all figured out and get into journalism. And sometimes it's later on. You never really know how things are going to go for you. So my advice is like, if it interests you, just work really hard at it. It's not that difficult to me. You pay attention, see what works, see what doesn't, adjust on the fly. Like there doesn't have to be one way that things go for you ever, a lot of different ways you can get to the same solution. 2 + 2 = 4, but so does 1 + 3. There's a lot of ways to get to the same thing sometimes.
For sure. And then obviously, as you know, too, and the listeners know, I'm very big on mentors. And obviously, like you were talking about, you met a couple people on podcasting, and obviously you cross paths with many people in this field along the way. So when you look back at kind of everything, even to today with the work that you do, who are some of like your mentors, and who do you credit that kind of title to? Who are some of those guys for you?
We've had good people in our corner along the way. I would say probably the earliest mentor from afar was like a Chris Herring. When we went to Knicks open practice, 2016, 17, probably. Um, we had talked, Chris was cool with a lot of us on Twitter, but we had asked if he was, down to meet up for lunch or something after open practice, just talk. And he kind of like put it on the table for us about, you guys could be doing more, actually. Like, you're all good, whatever, funny, whatever, trying to steer us in the right direction. And like little conversations like that have helped, when I was going to go to my first media day, just being able to shoot a note to him and being like, hey, man, I never asked these guys questions before. So what's the plan that I should have going in? And then like just being able to get a response from somebody like that always helps. So, for in a journalistic sense and trying to like find my footing in this industry, Chris helped a lot in the beginning, being guest on our pod, things like that. So there's that. But then after, it's like a Joe Caporoso who I actually work for now. Funny enough, I was always following Joe from Turn on the Jets and other stuff in the Twitter sphere just because I'm a Jets fan. And, so the things that we did with the Knicks wall, I wouldn't say base, but like I saw him building his independent Jets brand. And, you always take inspiration from certain ideas or things like that. So as we're building the Knicks wall up, it's, that was another like brand that we can kind of like, yeah, we got to try to get to where they're at, an established brand like that where people care. So, being able to at first do that from afar and now work closely with somebody like that to kind of show me the ropes, like in the actual industry has been huge, for me learning and getting to where I got to go. There's a lot of people, but like those are, probably a couple of the main ones.
Mm-hmm. And then follow up on that as well. Obviously, as you know, like you mentioned, you want to do a lot in this field. It's one of those things. This is one of those fields that people don't realize. You got to pay your dues. You got to really pack the resume. You got to be well-rounded all around. So when you look, kind of evaluate like your whole skill set, like the podcasting, the Knicks wall, there's so many different aspects that you cover as well. Is there any type of aspect when you kind of maybe down the line, whatever the case is, that you want to go into as like one area and focus on, or do you like this kind of pack your plate full and kind of just run with that type of style?
It's a good question. I think pack your plate full is probably the way to go with it. And I hate even saying that because, I and a lot of us probably feel the effects of like trying to do too much sometimes and run around and get to this event or cover this or, tweet about this or, make sure we have a social campaign or, we have articles going up or a podcast going out. And sometimes it gets to be a little bit much, but at the end of the day, that's what makes you appealing to people is when you're doing all these things and you are this busy. It's a tough industry to get in. There's no one single job for a lot of us in this industry. You got to wear a lot of hats. You got to, cover a lot of departments. So I think that's really the only way you got to go. You got to be versatile. You got to show that to whoever you're trying to get in with. And that's generally how they're going to like you.
Yeah, that's great advice because a lot of people, like obviously, as you know, probably through friends or even people that follow you or message you, right? They always think that like this is like the dream jobs, right? This is one of those type of atmospheres, but people don't realize how hard you have to work. It's not just like a year or two; it's like 5 years, 6 years to get to where you want to be, right? So, like with that being said, like what is the best advice that you received? Did you know like when you started this whole the kind of dream of yours and a passion of yours, did you understand that dues that hey, I have to pay this much towards the field in order to get to where I am?
I understood we probably weren't going to get anywhere was my initial thought on it. I just looking at the sports media landscape, I just figured it's going to take a lot for us to just make a name for ourselves. And then from there, it's going to take even more to like catch on with people and make this something that was more popular. So at first I didn't really think we were going to get anywhere. And especially because, a lot of people, when they start out with this, it's like, oh, I just want to write. I'll write about sports. I'll write about basketball. Oh, I just want a podcast. I'll just pod about it once a week. And then, unless you're really, really good and you have a lot of support, like it's tough to get noticed if you're just doing one or two of those things. So, it's tough to know when anything's going to like be a guarantee for you, but that's kind of why we just kept snowballing it and doing more and more. Cause it's like, okay, well, the writing isn't enough. The podcasting isn't enough. We got to do more. We got to even, be better on social media. How do we do that? We'll give stuff away. We'll make new campaigns. We'll make new graphics. Who can we get to do these graphics? I can do something, I know somebody who could do another one. Okay. Let's bring that person in. What about videos? We don't have any videos. And it's like, you have to really think about everything is my point. And I think that's when like, you can get to a place where anybody will notice you after that. But it's really just about the versatility. You got to do everything at this point. You got to be like a total package for the most part.
Most certainly, that's how you really survive in this field, most definitely. And then, so let's transition a little bit into mostly just the Knicks in general, right? So since you grew up a Knicks fan to today, obviously, as all of us know, even with the Nets, these two teams weren't good going years back, right? So like, when you look back at kind of that journey of when you started becoming a Knicks fan to today, what are some of those key like hills and valleys that stick out to you?
Yeah, I mean, it was easy for me to be a Knicks fan at first. I think my age group is probably a lot of the same story, but 90s Knicks were on the way out. We got that last little exciting group in 99 with, Houston and Camby and all those guys and, Spreewell. It was a great time. And that, for me, that was just an easy time to be rooting for the Knicks because they had good talent at the position that you needed it with either the center position with you and growing up, or then they had some premier perimeter talent. So for me, I've always been a guard guy. That's who I've always gravitated to. Houston and Spreewell were as good as it gets. Easy for me to be sold as a Knicks fan forever from there. Obviously, they've been really bad since, aside from a couple Carmelo years. So it's, it's been tough since then, but it's I don't really know how to describe. I mean, rooting for the Knicks is a very, in this time period, has been a very special and unique thing because it's like generally all of us collectively know like bad stuff was happening. Is like the best way to word it. Like most of the time it was like, all right, well, this isn't going to pan out. They're going to pick a kid. He's probably not going to work out, and then we've been trying to work out of that now, obviously, but like that's kind of where we had gotten to in those first couple of decades. So it was a wild ride to go from like, oh yeah, we're riding high to, cap the 90s, enter the 2000s, and then like, very swiftly go downhill. So, I mean, really the Isaiah era was like the initial part of it, and as we know, but then it's just, just a difficult transition, just a very strange fanhood.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. It's one of those, being Knicks fans, like one of those things. It's like, yeah, like the loyalty's there. Like I've said it from the very beginning. Knicks have one of the most loyal fan bases in all sports, really, because what they've just been doing. I'm from Jersey and I see it all the time, and I go to New York frequently and stuff. So, you see it all the time and stuff. But when you talked about the '90s Knicks, you talked about kind of that mellow era. So what was some of your favorite memories between that kind of year that sticks out, and then you could add in some favorite players as well.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the finals trip in '99 was nice. I was 8 years old, so that's one of my earlier memories, was just seeing, like even the Yankees championships back there. Like those are my like first really vivid sports memories. So, but that's why it's always cool for me just being able to see a highlight or something and it just kind of clicking. That's one of the first couple of things that's like super fresh in my brain. But aside from like various Allen Houston moments, because he was my favorite player growing up, take your pick, like 50-point games, the runner, like anything really with him. But if I had to pick a moment with the Carmelo stuff, obviously we didn't achieve as much as we would have liked to as a team during his time. But best probably moment for me was when I finally decided to buy expensive tickets for the first time in my life, and it ended up being the Easter game versus the Bulls, and he went off, obviously. So I had good seats for that one. I was right behind the basket. He was hitting those shots out. So for me, that was probably like the peak moment during that time. Because it wasn't just like Melo going off. It was like MSG actually felt like MSG. And, I even get sick of the belabored points with it's the Mecca. It's MSG. It doesn't mean anything when you say it every year. We're not winning games. It's not going the way we want. But at that point in time, it did feel real because it was real. And that's what the appeal, the allure of being a Knicks fan is, when those idiots, 20,000 idiots going nuts with you because Carmelo hit a jump shot. Like, that's exactly what you want. So, to me, that was delightful. The place was shaking. So I'll always remember those things.
And then one person I wanted to get your thoughts on is James Dolan. So, Bulls in your court. Like, what's your overall thoughts on the guy?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's any need for like a smear campaign here, but like, with I don't like how he's handled the team. Obviously, I think that's just pretty blunt with it. I don't like a lot of what's happened over the years. I will say, since Phil Jackson took over, he's been much more quiet. He's been more in the background. That doesn't mean nothing's happened. There's been a number of security incidents that just grind my gears, but for the most part, he's not been his normal intrusive basketball self. So it's tough with him because like how bad it's gotten, but then you also know like, all right, well, he hasn't been too loud lately. I don't know. So it's like this creeping thing where it's like right now, things are going well for them on the court, so it doesn't feel like much is going on. But then like it always takes one little blip. Like I know you wanted to work into it maybe later, but like it just ties in with the Ewing thing. Just recognize Patrick Ewing. I don't know. Like we seem to be the only franchise that we're unlucky enough to have this happen to us all the time with security. Maybe, and that's why I don't even think it's a Knicks thing. Everybody wanted to make it a Knicks or MSG thing. It's an MSG thing. They got to just relax these security guys, man. You can't have these guys interrogating fans for telling you to sell the team. You can't have these guys, busting, Patrick Ewing's balls as he's trying to walk around MSG, or, the Charles Oakley thing, which now Charles Oakley is, always loud about Dolan and the Knicks, but just get out of your own way. I don't know how else to describe it with some of this stuff. There's no stories if you don't make stories sometimes is the best way I try to talk about this stuff. And it's like, these are simple things that you could do as an owner of a team in charge of the security team to just not have problems. Just tell them to ease up. They're always at a 10. Just take it to an 8, man. Like, but anyway, I mean, as a whole with Dolan, like obviously, I'm very results based. You got to win games. If you win games, I don't care what you do. That's really what it comes down to for me, especially as a Knicks fan. So if you stay out of the way, nothing really is happening. We're winning games like most of the season was, then I will be happy. If you are going to have issues like the Patrick Ewing thing, and then we're also losing nonstop, like what is the draw for me to be rooting for you at that point? So he's got to strike a balance. Hopefully one day he gets there. I don't know how long we'll be stuck with him owning the team. But one day, hopefully he figures it out. Is the best thing I go for. But it's James Dolan. It's kind of just it is what it is at this point.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I gotta ask, like, who do you think has more control of the fan base right now, Dolan or his Twitter parody, Dolan J. Trump? Who do you think has more sway this time around? And obviously, it's a timely manner thing. Like, obviously, you're looking a decade ago. Obviously, one doesn't even exist. But in your opinion, honest, like, do you care for the Twitter parody, or are you just like,
no,
it is what it is?
I don't. I don't even like to. I don't like to be mean about accounts that I don't like or follow or things like that. But that one doesn't do anything for me. I don't see the appeal because I didn't find any of the stuff that was happening in this country with Trump very funny. So I found it like it didn't work for me as some sort of crude humor to just pertain back to the Knicks. It was just it's very forced. It was like, well, whatever line Trump had said, we'll just force it into a Knicks thing. And I don't know. To me, that's not very appealing. It's kind of just like lazy humor. You got to do better than that.
I appreciate your real candid talk about that.
It is what it is. And I mean, in terms of who's gonna like run the fan base, I get like who has more sway. Like it's always gonna be Maine Dolan because we react to Maine Dolan. Nobody reacts to the Twitter accounts. You know what I mean? Like as loud as I am, there's all these years. Like there's only a certain pull all of us still have at the end of the day. But we react when the real James Dolan does anything, and that's always going to be the barometer. So
yeah, because at least one of them has the power to do real actions. The other one's just words.
Well, on top of that, too, like, with any sports franchise, if they have a track history especially a big media market like New York. Like, just take the Knicks for example. There's plenty of other teams you could easily throw in this conversation, but obviously, if a team has one incident and then has another one, it's easy for the media and everyone else to snowball around it, right? Hover it around it, and mostly continue to portray something that's bad, right? So with the Knicks this year, it was interesting, like you said. Dolan's been a little quiet because the team's been doing good. And it's you never know what it could be. With Leon Rose, everyone had very high thoughts on him. Coming in, he's has very high relationships and everything. And it's kind of like what Dolan's been doing a little bit with the Islanders, where the Rangers. I mean, with the Rangers, that he kind of gives the keys to other people, such as the GM or the higher up people that run their organization, while he kind of just takes a back seat, sees what they could do, and go from there. So let's just hop into this season. So this season, obviously, you guys are sitting one game, I think, above 500. Obviously, it's great to see New York basketball winning again. I don't think anyone could argue that. So what have you liked and disliked about this season thus far? Just hopping into the second half of the season.
Look, I mean, really, it's gonna sound pathetic. I'm just so happy whenever I turn on the Knicks game at night. Two things. I always have two thoughts. I think I'm watching competent basketball, and like these guys are well coached, and they're gonna bust their ass. Like it sounds really simple, but like I think everybody's watched these Knicks teams basically this latter half of the last decade, where first it was Carmelo and then a bunch of ragtag guys. They would pretty much turn over the entire roster for him every year, like 2 or 3 straight years in a row, which is another reason when people talk about the Carmelo era, a bit harsh with, oh, well, he didn't win more. I mean, what are you going to do when every year you have G League teammates and then the next year they give you more G League teammates? That's basically what we were dealing with for a few years. Like it's a team game. But my point is, after seeing all those guys, all these kind of bums coming in and out every year, like just seeing a group of guys who, even most of them that I didn't believe in last year, because it's more or less the same roster, guys just like turning it around and helping being part of something better. And I just like that when I turn on a game, I know they have a chance to win. So, I mean, that's basically it for me. Like, they got smacked against Milwaukee, which that's Milwaukee. And, we smacked them earlier in the year. That's fine. That'll happen. How are you guys going to respond? They come out, they play a shorthanded OKC team, end up blowing them out. Julius Randle has a triple-double. RJ Barrett has a career high. And you go, well, that's excellent. That's excellent that they were able to bounce back like that, because normally they don't. Normally this would be a 2-game losing streak, 3-game losing streak. They would slide, they'd roll over. It's nice to see an actual offensive system that makes sense every game. You see Julius Randle doing the same stuff, creating the same shots. RJ's, every couple of weeks, it seems like he hits another new gear. So I just like that there's an actual plan. I don't know where this is going to go. I don't know how good they're going to be. I don't know if they end up this season good, making the playoffs. I don't know where this, it's a tightly contested East right now, but I just like that they fight, man. They have a chance. Like I try not to take that stuff for granted with how bad the basketball's been.
Exactly, because like with the Knicks too, with any team in the NBA by far, especially with big media markets, they thrive off it more, but it's the culture aspect of things, right? So it's obviously not identical to kind of what the Nets were doing, 2-3 years ago with Axelson starting, D'Angelo coming in. It doesn't give off like those type of vibes, but like you said, it's always going to be a tough grit. It's always Tibbs is going to play his guys hard. So leading into Tibbs, just obviously they're trending in the right direction and everything. But what has impressed you the most about Tibbs this season? Because, with young guys, he came into this job, and we all saw it, right? He was always being criticized. Oh, the young guy, he's going to treat the young guys too hard. He's going to play them too hard. There was that narrative around him. So kind of what's just your overall thoughts on Tibbs so far? Like, does he please? Obviously, he pleases you, but, like, what stands out to you about him?
Yeah, I mean, he's a floor raiser and a ceiling dropper to a degree. I think that he's obviously a very smart basketball coach in person. So I never want to sit here and pretend that I know anywhere close to what Tibbs knows, or I know more, or I'm somehow smarter. But it just, because he's so smart, he gets stuck in his ways with stuff over the years. He knows what works. Like, playing your good players more minutes isn't like rocket science. Like, basketball is a short game. So if you're playing your best players, 6-7 more minutes than they were playing, a season ago, you're going to have a positive outcome to some degree because you're elevating those guys. Now, with that is like making sure Julius Randle is a better player, is operating better, and so was RJ and stuff. But my main, I guess, happiness with Tibbs is being able to come in and quickly install a system for those guys, get them to flourish. If you watch the games consistently, Julius is basically setting up the same guys in the same spots every time. He comes down, dribbles the ball. It's either a couple quick handoffs and screens at the top of the key, or if not, he always knows, basically when the help's going to come, where to hit a guy in the corner. We have wide open threes all the time. Now, the issue is that the threes are going to Elfrid Payton or like a Reggie Bullock, and these guys aren't exactly lights out. So my issue with Tibbs is mostly just that he sticks with guys that I don't get why he sticks with them. He seems like a guy who goes based on merit, based on who's playing hard. And then when guys like Quickly are lighting it up, and the Quickly thing is particularly intriguing because his usage is sky high. So like he's getting all the opportunities that he could handle. It just always comes rushed like off the bench versus yesterday we saw hey, we've been screaming all year that Quickly's got to play with Randle and RJ. And then what happens? As soon as he puts Quickly with Randle and RJ, the game goes from a close 1 or 2 point game to a 10, 15 point game in a matter of minutes, just because you can't double Julius Randle anymore because he's going to kick out to that guy. So it's little things like that I wish Tibbs would adjust, because it's it gets a little frustrating when it's okay, well, Elfrid's healthy. It's back to Elfrid starting. And, the offense is now worse than the league again. It's he gives a little bit. He sets a baseline. He sets a precedent, sets a new culture for you guys. That's great. And then on the flip side, it's well, if you're so smart, how can you not see some of these so basic basketball holes with this team right now? So that's my give and take with Tibbs. I'm mostly very happy, but it's just we could be doing better, to be honest. We're 1 game over 500. If the offense was better, who knows where we might be right now? I'm not saying top of the East, but a couple more games better from here, surely.
Mm-hmm. Most definitely. No, I agree with you 100% on those points. And, with Julius Randle, he's an interesting case, right? For a lot of people just around the league in general, not to just generalize around Knicks fans, they wanted him. They said, you know what, this is a good investment. He could be trade bait. He could kind of get his career on the rails. Then you could trade him off. This year, now he turned into an all-star, kind of gives off that similar vibe to, just overall around the league is just don't give up on young players. You see Julius Randle now, and he's just balling out, all-star around the boards, well-deserved of it. So what's been your overall thoughts on Julius Randle? And to follow up with that question, do you think that he is a long-term piece for this team, or do you think that he could be viewed as more of a kind of a pioneer or a cornerstone player in a rebuild effect?
I mean, the correct answer, the right answer is either one, I think. But my answer is more that in the context of the Knicks and where they've been and not having a guy basically since Carmelo wanted to be the guy and forced himself to be here. I think it's important, you brought up the Nets point before where, maybe they were or weren't trying to, figure out a parallel like that to start somewhere. And I think that a lot of us wanted them to kind of take that route, but in taking that route means taking care of your own players, whoever they are, to your immediate success at the moment. And to me, it's okay, so you signed Julius Randle as a consolation prize when we missed out on KD and Kyrie, obviously. That's fine. He had a pretty good 2010 year, if you look at it in a vacuum, but it was clunky. The spacing was bad. It could have went better, basically, was what a lot of fans felt like. And then he comes in this year. He was already in good shape last year, comes in even better shape this year, and you get this all-around star who's playing, not just, a much better scorer, but he's also a much, much better passer now. Everything's doubled up, his passing rates, his assists, everything. On top of that, he's playing plus defense, really physical plus defense. He had a couple spurts in his career before this, but now he's really locking guys up. And it's all right, he just turned 26 years old. we still got him on an option for next year, and it's, you know, we could extend him out another 4 years now, and it's like, this is when you got to start taking care of your own guys. If you're the Knicks and you haven't been able to sign people, this is when you got to start taking care of your own guys. This guy, in one season, he was about to get booed off not me. I really was like the lone Julius defender last year. I thought it was tough, but I thought mostly the spacing, the coaching, those things were more to blame. And it seems like that's mostly been the case. And it's like, you got to just reward that guy at some point. You just got to pay that man. We are under the cap floor. We are the Knicks. We're worth $4 billion. We're under the cap floor this year. We have nobody on the books moving forward. That is great. We have so many picks. We have 8 picks over the next 5 years, 7 over the next 4 first rounders. So my point is, if you sign Julius Randle, if you do the extension, 4 years, $106 million, you can easily sign somebody else. If we are now an attractive destination, somebody can easily just come here and plop their max contract in, and there's no issues, even if you pay Julius Randle. So that's mostly where I've been on this. To me, you can't lose because people are already going to be interested to trade for him right now. So if you lock this person in, that isn't going to go anywhere. People are still going to be interested in Julius Randle. You just now have him locked onto your team. No contract is untradeable. Russell Westbrook and John Wall just got moved. We learn this every year. So I'm very fearless with this stuff. If he's playing well, he's 26 years old. He just had an all-star season. Pay him. You should offer him the 4 years, $106 million yesterday. If he says no and wants to chase a little bit more from you guys, that's also his right, but he should at least know that you've offered that to him. So that's mostly where I'm at. To me, this is how you build a culture. It's not just winning games on it. If he's going to play well for you guys, now you reward him. You open the checkbook up and you make sure that he's compensated properly.
Mm-hmm. Most of it, I totally agree with that. And with before Doug asks you more Knicks questions, one question I want to ask you too is, you have an all-star, but you don't have a star, right? So do you think the Knicks are in that stage of, or what do you think the better of the two doors is, right? Do you think that the Knicks should say, hey, we're going to try to trade for a star right now? Or do you think that they should wait it out for the rest of the season, see how this season plays out, kind of continue to build on that culture and foundation, and then in the free agency next season, start throwing some star discussions in that mess?
Yeah, I don't think it's ever too soon. We've seen how fleeting success can be in this league, and if you start to have some, I think you should always be going for it. It's always going to be my mindset. You should always be trying to get somebody good. And my thing with it too is, a lot of times now deals for stars are a lot of draft capital. It's a lot of draft capital and a little bit of salary to make it work. And the Knicks have a lot of draft capital and a little bit of salary to make that work. So it's like, you know, they have a couple of pieces you can move in terms of, you know, okay, let's say you keep a Randle and RJ, a Quickly, you know, could you trade a Mitchell Robinson? Could you trade an Obi Toppin? You know, are these guys that, you know, certainly at least, you know, Mitchell Robinson is a impact starter in this league. We know that much, but Obi might still have some value while he's still early in his career and being a lottery pick that people were interested in. So I think like when you start to have some pieces like that and you get a stroke of good luck where it's like Julius Randle is now an all-star, we're going to pay him, he's going to be here for the foreseeable future. You got to quickly move on these things too. This is, again, my mindset. It's often been unpopular with Knicks fans, but this is the way that I often view things, because if not, you end up with the Kevin Knox in year 4 that you never moved because you were too scared to, and now nobody wants him. Or Frank Ntilikina, who, although he's been playing a little bit better lately, same thing. Nobody's going to really want him. So I'm always of that mindset. It doesn't mean like, you know, abandon the rebuild. It just means, look, man, we are paying nobody right now. We have a lot of picks we can move. If someone were to become available, we should absolutely be trying and see what happens there. So I don't think it's like one way or the other. I think they should be actively looking for that move. I hope that they're actively looking for that move because guys are available every year. There's 2 or 3 guys who are like newly available every year. Those become the guys. We focus on them for a year and a half till 1 or so of them gets moved, and then we move on to the next target. So for me, you know, I think be patient. You have no reason to rush with the position that you're in now. A couple of these breaks where RJ's playing out of his mind, Randle stepped up, but, you know, you still got to get someplace. You still got to find another way to lock somebody else in, whether that's in free agency or via trade, you know. So I think they always got to be looking to make a move and ready to take somebody on like that.
Yeah, for sure. So who are your 2 to 3 guys, realistic expectations for like potential trade targets coming up?
So really, I'm going to disappoint you guys greatly because I'm not going to
It's
give
fine.
you
I mean,
any big names. I'm gonna so my 2 or 3 that I'm genuinely hoping for was like go get me like Lonzo Ball or like JJ Redick. Like go figure one of these fringe guys out or get another young star. Somebody might or not young star Lonzo, but another young piece somebody might be interested in. My point is. There's like 5 guards right now trying to compete for playing time in New Orleans, and it's a strange team and fit for the most part for a lot of players there. So yeah, go take a couple pieces from there. Go give up a Kevin Knox. Like we need shooters, man. I don't know. Like Lonzo seems like he'd fit more with this offense in terms of being a playmaker than whatever it is that Alfred Payton tries to contribute to this basketball club. So I mean, I would just like to see Lonzo in like some low move like that for me, to be honest. If of course I can't get my dream of Bradley Beal, which seems like I won't.
yeah, no, for sure. I mean, Lonzo will fill the need of, taking minutes away from Alfred entirely and Frankie. So that's like a good because they both have a similar defensive aspect mindset. So that's a good upgrade there. JJ may still be able to give you some decent 3-point shooting, and obviously he gets to go home to Dumbo where his family is, so it's a win-win. Maybe we'll get some podcasting going between the two of you. So, what are your expectations for the second half of the season? Do you think Julius Randle will be a lock for MIP?
A lock? No, but I mean, he's got to be. It's sort of my coach of the year thing with Tibbs. Like he's got to be one of the main contenders. Like he's probably got to be first, first, second in some fashion. You got him somewhere there. Like Jeremy Grant, I think is obviously the way that he so quickly jumped to being a top option and knowing that he was going to be. I don't want to downplay either. I do think though, if Randall's doing this all around, and they end up being a playoff team, it's kind of hard to not give him that award. Is the way that I'm looking at it. I'm going to be biased, of course, with this, but I just think like it was the All-Star case for me too. It was like, what else do you really need to see from him at this point? He's doing everything on offense.
Playoffs.
He's doing everything on defense. It's directly impacting because if Julius Randle ever has a bad game, we lose by 15. Like that's what ends up happening. We played the Spurs. Randle had a bad game. We lost by a bunch. We're playing the Bucks. The Bucks played him physical. He had a tough game. We lost by a bunch. Julius Randle has a good game, triple-double. We win by a bunch. Like it's the margin for error is Julius Randle right now for the Knicks. So I don't know. I mean, it's impossible to do more than he's doing for this basketball team is the best way to put it. Like they are directly, he's directly responsible for like most of the success that they're going to have here. So
no,
I would give it to him. I would give it to him.
I would give it to him too. And as a Nets fan, I'm being like quite honest. Like, yeah, it's great what Grant's doing over in Pistons, but like he did get the All-Star. He was close to potentially getting All-Star. His team as a whole is not really going anywhere. I mean, if you compare rosters, yeah, the Knicks do have better players overall. And yeah, you could say the boost of numbers, what they did last year compared to this year. But like, think of it this way. There's so much bigger impact that like clearly seen. And yes, you can play the New York media card, but I generally feel like, and Christian Wood had a chance, but then the injury kind of threw him, maybe out of the race. So I think those two probably are at the top of it all. And because we talked about it a few times, and you weren't entirely sure, but I'm gonna have to get a strong answer from you. Do you think the Knicks are a lock for the playoffs, or will they need to battle their way through the play-ins? And you can give us a seed as well if you'd like to be bold.
I think they make the playoffs. I forgot when it happened earlier this year. It was probably after like the 15th or so game, but I was like, they're in every game. Like we had a tough schedule the first like 15 or so games, and then it got, much easier after that. But I was like, every game it seems like we're within 5 to 10 points at worst. And in 2021, never going down 15-20 is kind of a big deal because those leads happen so frequently now with the way points are scored. So seeing the Knicks like consistently set a defensive baseline to like always be in games, like to me, it's got playoffs written all over it. You've been floating over 500 most of the year. I don't see any reason for that to stop, given that their net rating, I think, as a whole is like plus barely a couple of points, which is off the strength of their defense being really good and their offense being good enough some nights. So I don't know. I mean, low playoff seed. I probably have them. They settle in somewhere like 6-7. I would assume. I don't want to. I just, with the way the Heat are coming on right now too, I don't want to sit here and try to be too bullish on this team. I love them. That they've been doing really well to start this year, but it's like, all right, the Heat are going to come back. They're healthy. Jimmy's healthy. Bam's healthy. Like, they're rolling now. So, a couple teams are going to take their spots in the pecking order, but that's fine. I think the Knicks are still going to finish in here somewhere. I don't think it's going to come to the play-ins. I hope not anyway. But I see them probably finishing somewhere like 6th, 7th, just over 500. Just at 500 type of deal, like they have been most of the year. I think they're just going to pace like they have been.
Well, I hope you get your shooters because, one more point guard upgrade because you got Quickly, you got D-Rose, vibing. So get your shooters, and I think that's very fair assessment. I'm here for it, even though it just means that our Jets, are still going to be the only disappointing team in New York. But, look into next year, the Jets, maybe, but, this is not the time to talk about that team. So, last thing about the Knicks, do you feel, reading the wrong question. Do you think that the season will lead to some strong free agent signings going forward? And who are your realistic signings? And then Chris will take over.
Yeah, I don't know that it will. I think if they just keep winning some games and they do the right thing with, guys like Julius, Randle, I think that's when the shift will probably start. I think players aren't going to be fooled by 20, 30 good games. I think that they're going to want to see that and then go, oh, okay, Julius Randle was for real. They took care of Julius Randle. I like what they're building. Maybe I'm going to head over there. Maybe I'll see what's going on. I think they just want to see that there's a plan. I think if you lock in Julius, I think it starts to show you that there's a plan here, which, then you'd assume they're going to try to take care of RJ Barrett and we can finally break this Charlie Ward curse. But yeah, I don't know. Main targets, obviously I love premier guys. I'm not going to ever say like those are at the top of mine and everybody's lists. I know there's speculation for, guys like Kawhi, if things don't go right, he has the option, he could walk. But I mean, I would just want them to throw some money at Gary Trent Jr. Like I always try to be modest in free agency. I don't think you need to do a whole lot sometimes. Just go get Gary Trent Jr. Like very, very clearly we need shooting and he does lots of that. And well, I think, Portland's always spending a lot of money on fringe players and you could force them into a tough spot. So just go throw a bunch of money at him. Like he's top of my list. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, there's some other like I think Devontae Graham, I think is an expiring contract this year. I think he's going to be a free agent. Like he's another guy who's like a combo guard type shooter that I'd like. I would like for the Knicks to trade for him for the low now with the LaMelo situation. But I mean, most of my who I wants are always going to just be like, is he a guard and can he shoot? Like that's the top of my list. As long as you're going to build teams around Julius Randle, RJ Barrett, and Mitchell Robinson. Like, go find me the perimeter talent. Like, we know you have Quickly on the bench. Go find more Quicklies. Go find more guys who are just going to light it up from the wing. You start doing that, and then this team's going to be in good shape.
Mm-hmm. And then one thing I gotta ask too is with the Knicks, I agree with that. It's all about foundation and build up, right? No team is going to be good when just a star player comes in, like you were talking about. The foundation isn't there and anything. With this next Gary Trent Jr., I do like that as a great option. I think Gary Trent's taking that leap, and I think he'll easily get up there. And one thing I want to ask is obviously, I don't think it'll happen, nor do I think it's a good move. But do you think that Melo should sign a 10-day or any type of contract, let alone for next season?
I mean, personally, yeah. I just think, first of all, everybody decided that Carmelo was done playing basketball well over 2 years ago. And, he just moved to 11th last night, passing Hakeem on the all-time scoring list. He's going to most likely break the top 10 this year. Yeah, I mean, I would, in this culture that you're trying to build, you got to start doing some stuff like that. That's why I always say, like, it's not just about making like cheap, frugal basketball moves. Like if you talk to Knicks fans, they think the culture basically starts with drafting players, never trading those players, and then always taking cheap flyers on other players. And I think that's the only way, the singular only way that the culture gets changed. Culture gets changed by like the Julius Randle thing, a touchdown. The culture gets changed by, all right, we didn't have the best relationship with Melo when we left. Let's make amends. Let's make, one of the all-time greats of this game happy before he retires. Even if you didn't, accomplish everything you wanted to as a team, he still holds a bunch of Knicks records, the way he moved up in his time here on a lot of the all-time ranks and lists that we have. So I think at some point you got to do a show of respect. And even if you don't do the whole jersey retirement thing, like you got to just let him ride off to the sunset with you. I think stuff like that's important. I will always be, team optics. Optics matter more than people think that they matter. Like you got to do little feel good things to make the fans feel good, to make Melo feel good, to make the league feel good about what you're doing. So the more of those things you can do, the better. I would be very on board with them doing something like that.
No, I agree with that. It's more of the relationship more than anything because it wears off on players. We see it all the time. And especially, with the Knicks, with the image that I guess you could say it's quote unquote they have portrayed around them, the cloud, It's one of those moves that could really pay out. But let's move on a little bit and talk about All-Star, I guess you could say All-Star Day rather than All-Star Weekend. But what were your overall thoughts on that? Did it meet your expectations?
Yeah, I mean, I thought this All-Star Weekend wasn't going to be great. I think a lot of us sort of had eye rolls with it when they were going to, physically go through with it versus just announcing who was going to make things. I thought the All-Star game itself was fine. I'm a big All-Star game truther. I think a lot of people like us are grown and we want, the All-Star game to be as viciously competitive as a good regular season game or a playoff game. And all these rules need to happen for us to get there. And I think what they're doing now with like the Elam ending is probably exciting enough where, a couple of big shots are built into the game. But aside from that, these games are not for us. These games are for the 10-year-olds at home. These games are for the young kids just learning about the NBA, wanting to find a team, find a player to stick with, and for these guys to put on a show. I always try to keep that in mind. That is always the point. I reserve my energy for the contests. Like, you got to make the contest better. Like, the three-point contest, excellent. You couldn't make the three-point contest better if you tried at this point. You have Steph in it all the time. You have Dame in it. You have, Joe Harris shooting 50%. He was in it. Not this year. But that's the kind of thing that you need to have all your events be good. You need to have your best of the best doing those things, where the skills contest, they do a great job. I feel like, even though things were rushed this year, Luka didn't take his warm-ups off. Very disappointing. But I think you got to have like your top A-list type guys. Like, even having Obi in the dunk contest, loved that. That was great. Don't have the dunk contest at halftime. Just do the dunk contest before the game if you're going to do it with the rest of the contests. And also, like, if you got to settle for like Cassius Stanley and Anthony Simons, who, although he ended up winning, it's like the headliner into that was Obi. They announced Obi 2 weeks in advance, and then the other guys. It's like, you gotta find a better way to make this exciting. The dunk contest can't become a rushed, halftime event with C-level talent. You gotta find a way to get like the Zions into it again. And even if not the Zions, like, why is like not a Miles Bridges in it? Like, there's a lot of good young guys in this league. Like, I don't know who you extended invitations to, but that was my main gripe, was the dunk contest. And on that note, just because Obi was in it, you probably asked me anyway. I think Obi probably lost the dunk contest for himself. I thought he had the best lineup of dunks. No idea why he used his best dunk. Second,
I agree. Oh, I thought his best dunk was the first one. I love his first one.
That one was also very good. But my point is, either one of those dunks could have been the last dunk and probably won. And his second dunk could have been anything. He needed a 34 to advance, and he uses jumping over his dad and Julius Randle with the one-handed. Save that for last. Did you not know you were going to get to the finals with the free throw line dunk? Like, I don't know. That was my only real dunk contest gripe. But seeing Randle in the All-Star game was good. I always enjoy the skills contest. I always enjoy the three-point contest. But otherwise, maybe don't rush it on a COVID weekend. It would be my take.
Most definitely. And then, obviously, with the All-Star game, it had got some heat for it because, you look back, the NBA didn't really have that much of an off season for guys that had a lengthy bubble, or the guys that had a lengthy bubble. And then the rigors of the first half of the season and stuff. So do you feel like the season's been rushed so far? And do you think, just on top of that as well, do you think you could contribute? Talking league wide, not Knicks obviously, because Knicks have been drilled with a lot of more health and safety protocols rather than injuries as of late. But would you credit kind of that low preparation, the no training camp, the rigor schedule, to kind of the more injuries that we have been seeing this year?
Yeah, I mean it's a strange season, and there's a lot more back to backs and moved up games, and this is unfortunately what they were always going to try to do once baseball and NFL powered through their season. So it just seemed like what was going to come. But I mean, it's been a wild year, man. I mean, even if you just play like fantasy basketball, it's the easiest way to tell. Like everybody's lineups every game, every game. We got two guys out postponed, two other guys actually injured, another guy like it's wild. Some guys are just game to game because they're still in the protocol. They might be coming out of the protocol. It's a truly wild, bizarre season. Like in a sense, I enjoy it because it's like, okay, like normally we have an 82 game season. We know who's who. We know who's going to play well. We know when good teams are going to have bad games or trap games. Like, when the letdowns are going to happen. It's sort of as not casual NBA fans, like, the ebbs and flows to how it rolls. And this season's been much different because it's like every game, it feels like all of us are like, what? Who's hurt? Who's going to be out 2 weeks? What's going on with that team? The Wizards are decimated. The Grizzlies can't play for 2 weeks. What's going on here? Like, it's an insane season. And they're postponing these games, and then the postponed games were just like to be made up in the second half of a schedule that they didn't even put out yet at the time. It's like it's a very unique season. It's the best way I could put it. Like, I'm trying to find silver linings with it all throughout, but like at the end of the day, like it's very wild. I think a lot of us are seeing, more players on more teams than we've probably ever seen because guys got to go deep with how many guys are missing time and things like that. So just a very, very strange season.
Yeah, and all power to the two-way players who are getting the best benefit of this, and hopefully expanded rosters and that kind of thing will be more standardized. I mean, I hate the rush because it was for the Olympics partially, and I'm also, as biased Nets fan, the contact tracing protocols, got KD hurt in my opinion. I blame the league for that because it's kind of hard. It's not like, he has his own personal gym he can fully rep up, but I just had to throw that in. It's painful. But when it comes to the Nets, what are your thoughts? As a unbiased or biased Knicks fan, let us have it. You're muted.
Oh yeah, so this is one of my more favorite, I guess, NBA things because everybody assumes that I have to not like the Nets. I actually like the Nets. No, this is my longtime stance. I've always not rooted from afar, but like they've never done anything to me. Going to Madison Square Garden has always been expensive. My family hasn't always had money, but I would go to Knicks games, but I would also go to Nets games because if you guys are from this area, which you are, then all the deals growing up for the Nets. Everything was cheap. They were trying to get you into Nets games all the time. I'd go to McDonald's and there'd be these $4 tickets or whatever it was to go to nosebleeds if you just bought a McDonald's meal. So like my family was always like taking advantage of those things. And for me, I just like the NBA. So I didn't go to Nets games to root for the Nets. I went to Nets games to watch good NBA basketball. So the Nets provided a cheap way for me to do that all the time. I got to watch Allen Iverson light it up. I got to watch, Prime Shaq when he came to the Heat. I got to watch him with Dwayne Wade playing there in New Jersey. So it's like over the years, I watched a lot of really good, talent that I might not have been able to afford if they were playing at MSG. And for me, that was always important. So I've never hated the Nets at all. Like I've always liked watching them when they had Jason Kidd, Kenyon Martin, I always loved. Like the Vince Carter trade obviously helped. But then it's like I never had any ill will with them. Like even once they started getting good players, it was like I was more mad the Knicks didn't get KD and Kyrie than it was like, oh man, they went to the Nets. Oh my God. And then I got to lose my mind because it's the Nets. I was just like, all right, man, well, now I get to watch them in my market. No big, it's going to be annoying if we stink, which we did last year, but I don't really care. So like, it's the same way now. It's like, I don't care in some bad way that you guys got the big three or James Harden. It's like, it's cool for me because now I get to just turn on the TV and those three are playing basketball all the time, which the last couple of years for both of us, it was like, you're going to watch a bad Knicks team and then you're watching like a passably good Nets team. And that was like the draw to New York basketball. And now it's like, okay, well, now you're watching a, decent Knicks team every night. And on top of that, you can watch the Stars and the Nets every night. So it's like in our area, I feel like you can't lose if you're just a basketball fan. So, I'm not saying out here, go Nets every night, but it's like, yeah, I mean, who's not going to want to watch those three playing basketball, especially when like I don't have to jump through hoops to watch all of them at the same time right now.
Yeah,
So,
especially because you don't need to deal with the whole league pass thing. Like it's in your network, like it's in your vicinity. So kind of a good lead up. Do you think each fan base cares too much about what the other is doing? So for example, what matters to you more, having higher attendance and media coverage or wins?
when I've never understood that, like this being a talking point, or it's something that comes up almost every other day, it feels like. And it's like, who cares, man? Like the attendance and shit and getting the back page is like, yeah, that's good. It's good to know you have good fans. It's good to know that you're the center of attention, right? But like Knicks fans love that, but then they also hate it when it goes the opposite way, when bad things happen and we get the negative back pages. And, so for me, it's like, I do think we do care too much as fans. I think fans put too much stock in this stuff. I've never had any ill will with the Nets or Nets fans. I've never thought about, well, the Nets are great, but they're going to have less attendance. Haha. It's like, well, what point am I making in trying to win the argument there? Like, what is my point? You guys
It's a
are less cool.
participation trophy. That's all it is.
Yeah, and it's like I just don't care to argue about that stuff, man. Like I'm 30 years old. I just don't feel like arguing about attendance and why that makes your team slightly less cool. Or it just are you going to win basketball games? That's all that I really care about from my own point of view. I personally don't care for any of that stuff. I'm always just about the wins. I don't care. The Knicks got to win the back page. I just care that the Knicks are relevant and playing good basketball. And if they're playing good basketball, the Nets are also playing good basketball. Then that's a good problem to have. And if we got to run into you guys in the playoffs or whatever, then again, that's a situation we wouldn't have been in a couple of years ago. Yeah. So I think we spend too much. It's almost like the Mets Yankees stuff too. And that's like the actual ingrained New York version. I'm a big Yankees fan. I never have hated the Mets. I don't give a shit what the Mets are doing. I like watching the Mets. I like just being able to like watch a good baseball team in my own market and just like not have to analyze or go crazy. Like that's how my brain works. I like seeing it nearby and then go, oh, okay, cool. If the Mets are good, more Mets fans are going to be happy, which means that's better with all the Yankees fans that are happy, which means when they play each other, we're going to have good games to remember this season. So it's an enhancer for me. If the Nets are good, the Knicks are good. It's an enhancer. So I think fans just got to stop being stupid about a lot of this stuff. It doesn't mean anything at all.
Yeah, no, it's one thing to be like jokey, brotherly love kind of thing, but it's another thing when people start getting malicious about it and like take it to heart.
Jokes are jokes. People are always going to have jokes. Like there's always good jokes with it on both ends too. That's why I think that's where that's where it originated from, but people always got to get too personal and sensitive about stuff. Yeah. Like make your jokes. Nets fans make your jokes. Knicks fans make your jokes. That's the beauty of sports. But at the end of the day, if you're taking there's no battle to win if we're talking about attendance. There's just not. We're going to talk in circles. We're going to make the same point and then go in a circle about it 1,000 times, say the same jokes. It just gets tiresome.
Yeah, for sure. So final question. Who do you have winning it all this season?
I have the Lakers. That was just my initial stance coming into this year. I saw LeBron win last year. I said there's no way he's not getting back this year, and I think he's going to just get another one. He knows he's on the clock. So, I mean, that was always my stance. This is a weird year. Anything could happen. I now have the Nets going to the finals with them. It's just the reality of the situation. In a weird year, I think you have to bet on talent even more than before. Same thing that I felt in the bubble. So, I feel like it's probably going to be Lakers, Nets. I don't even know if the Lakers can handle the big three of the Nets, to be quite honest with you, but I just wouldn't bet against LeBron James, which is my normal stance until proven otherwise. And I would just bet against LeBron again, or bet with LeBron again there. So I'm going to go Lakers. I have a Lakers Nets finals. I go Lakers in probably 6 or 7.
Sounds good. Well, thanks again for joining us. Thank you for springing forward with us, Kyle. We really appreciate taking your time out of your day to join us. And hopefully, this is the beginning of a new era for New York sports. Besides the Jets, we'll find out next season. So just give us a plug where to follow you, where you want to be followed, and then Chris will take us home.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you guys having me on. It was a lot of fun. You can follow me at Kyle Maggio on Twitter. That's the only real spot that you need to follow me personally. But make sure you're following, Whistle Sports at Whistle Sports. Make sure you're following the Knicks Wall at the Knicks Wall. And that's about it for me.
Thank you again for coming on, man. We really appreciate it. So, guys, for everyone listening and watching, remember to send us over any suggestions, questions, comments, or thoughts on any of our content by sending us an email at wingspanpodcast@gmail.com. And do not forget to follow us on our social media accounts. But most importantly, make sure you subscribe to our podcast on your preferred listening service. And as for next time, stay classy, take care, and wear a mask.